Hey guys, welcome back to The Joy of Wrenching. My name's Les and I'm your friendly neighborhood mechanic. Today I am going to go over how to remove the valve covers on a 2018 to newer Gen 2 Ford 3.5 Turbo Ecoboost, whatever you want to call it. Most of the videos out there don't show all of the nitty-gritty steps. That's why this one's so long. But if you are in the unfortunate position where you need to do this job, you're going to appreciate all those little steps, all those hoses, all those connectors, all of the things that I show that you just won't get elsewhere. So let's get into it and follow along. So what you're going to be watching is an excerpt from a video that I made taking the timing cover, the front cover, off of the front of one of these engines. And so I wanted to sort of peel this part out for you that just want to take the valve covers off to replace those gaskets and seals. I also have another video showing exactly how to get those seals in and out of these plastic or composite covers without breaking them. So check that out. There's going to be a few parts in this video here that may or may not be super critical for you to do, because I was trying to get to the front of the engine, not just to the valve covers. So I may show a few things that need to come off or show a few things coming off that you may not need to remove. But either way, you should be able to get these valve covers off following these directions. And so again, let's get into it. First thing we need to remove of this jumbled mess down here is going to be our air intake pipes, these big plastic pipes here for the induction, and those are held on with these worm clamps, and these are 7mm. Just loosen these things up and then we'll be able to release these. There we go. Now, next thing I'm going to undo is this thing here, and this little clamp just twists and pulls off, just like that. All right, so now, let's see if we can get these loose. Not quite. I may have to break that seal there between the hose and the piping, but if you do, you can get a little pick and put it between the two and pull them apart. Looks like these are coming apart a little bit easier than that one over there. And I may need to loosen it up just a little bit more than I did in some cases. I'm pulling apart these tubes. I noticed this one got a lot of oil pouring out of the bottom of it. That's rebreathed oil. So a lot of people will put a catch can on these Ecoboosts to try and catch some of that, because that oil will get inside of your intercooler and make it a little less efficient over time. Now, if you're in the unfortunate position like me to have to work on something like this and really be up over the top of the engine for a long period of time, I highly recommend that you invest in one of these things. I'm not sponsored by it, but I will put a link in the description to it. A topside creeper. Man, that thing saves your back and your legs and your knees. The older we get, let's face it, the more we need that. But it just makes everything so much easier to access on top of the engine, and you can just kind of lay on top of it. Really makes it a lot more enjoyable. So again, the name of this channel is The Joy of Wrenching. This is one of the ways that you keep the joy in wrenching. The first thing we want to remove from the top side here is this beauty cover or silencer. And you got a couple of 10mm nuts on studs down in these little wells here. And then you just lift up on it and pull it forward to get it out of the way. I'm going to go ahead and put my hardware back where I got it so that I don't have to bag and tag everything, and it just keeps things nice and neat. Let's see what we got here. It looks like a little bit of water pooling in some of these little divots here. Here's our high pressure pump here, and just sort of a visual check. A number of the Ecoboosts of the earlier vintage will develop cracks in these valve covers, and so you just want to make sure that there's no oil leaks from the valve cover area here. And if so, if you do see oil leaks up on top of the valve covers, oftentimes check for cracks in areas like that. This one's got a little bit of a oil weeping past these solenoids here for the cam phasers, and we're going to replace the gaskets, including all of these, so that we don't have any more leaks there either. But as you can see, the oil leak down here that we're concerned about is not coming from up here. There's a little bit of weepage here, but that's not going any further than the valve cover, so that's not the cause. We're still on the hunt for our cause of our oil leak. Now that the beauty cover, the engine cover, is removed, let's go ahead and start working on some of these air pipes. So, like everything else, orange clamps, 7mm, loosen them up. There's another one down here. Let's see if we can get to it. Oh goodness, a bit of a tight fit in there. May not be able to show you. Come on. And do yourself a favor, when you go to put this stuff back on, you can spin these clamps around sometimes to be more accessible in the future. Alright, in addition to those clamps, we've got a ton of little hoses and things that we're going to have to undo, but I'm going to take it one step at a time. Here's an electrical connector, and we're going to go ahead and take these things loose. Most of these are going to be squeeze and pinch and pull type things to get loose. Wire connected there. Alright. There we go. Squeeze and pull. Okay. And tuck this thing out of the way. Now, one of the things I like to do is put a piece of really bright colored tape on anything that I unplug. And that'll be a good tip for you guys too, because that way whenever you start putting things back together, something like this, black on black, it might blend in and you may forget to plug that thing back in. But if you see a piece of orange tape wrapped around something when you're done, you know, hey, I'm not completely finished hooking things back up. There we go, that's better. Now that thing will stand out like a sore thumb, that piece of orange tape, whenever you go to put things back together. All you got to do is have a glance in the engine bay real quick and you'll be like, ah, there's a piece of orange tape. I'm not done. Okay, with these 3 worm clamps undone, here, here, and down here, we can go ahead and remove this piece, this, but it's got a coolant overflow line sort of snapped into it. So we'll pull that off of here. One-handed, and free this up. So that made a little bit of room in here. We've got this pipe here which goes all the way down and underneath, and we'll have to go down there and disconnect it at the bottom. Looks like that might be easier to get to from the wheel well over here on the passenger side, but I'll show you that here as we figure out what we need to do there. Then we've got these crossover pipes as well, and still a menagerie of things. So what I'll probably try to do is, again, we're just trying to make room to work in the front of this engine bay, so I'll probably undo some things and maybe pull them to the side as much as I can, you know, kind of halfway leave things attached where I can get away with it. So let's get started with some of these hoses and just move them out of the way. And every one of them, I think it must be some kind of a challenge at the manufacturers to just come up with weird ways to connect hoses, and they'll have a dozen different ones on the same vehicle. It just sometimes doesn't make sense. But this one here, you got to move this little tab up on both sides and then push it in. Try and do this with one hand here, and then you can kind of grab it. And of course everything's aluminum, so my magnetic light doesn't want to stick to anything. Goodness gracious. I'm trying to get you guys the best quality of lighting as possible here. There we go. So once you get this thing pulled out like that, you can slide these hoses off. And then, let's see, if we can just swing this stuff up and out of our way. I think so. But it may also just be as easy to go ahead and remove it. Looks like we've got another one of those clamps back here. So we'll pull these towards us and then up. Again, kind of tough to do with one hand, but you get the gist. So let's get this guy here. We'll just lift this tab up. Once we've got the little green tabs pulled forward, slide it off with the booster. And I heard some vacuum release, so you know that that's got a good seal. And it looks like we're attached over here a little bit. I'll go ahead and release this white tab. Anytime you see a tab on a connector, you'll probably have to release that to squeeze it and take it off like that. Okay. We got us another one down here. This one's yellow. Same sort of thing. You gotta lift the little tabs on the back to push it out. And then you can slip it off. Here we go. So this thing is almost free, except it's kind of tethered to the air box here with a little Christmas tree. We'll go ahead and wiggle that Christmas tree loose. There we go. And that gets that out of our way. Starting to free up a little bit of space. And since I took another electrical connector apart, I'm going to put that flagging tape on it so that I'll remind myself to put it back together. Okay, looks like we've got another couple of clips here. This one's got a red clip and it's just squeezed together. The little tabs on the back and push it forward. And then a green clip too. And again, they just, I mean, I tell you, these guys come up with, they just dream of different ways to make clips and little attachment points that all have their own little special way of coming apart. For what reason? If you guys know, let me know. Goodness. And there's the red one. And then it's also attached to the inlet over here at the throttle body. So we'll go ahead and detach it. Wow. A million of these things. Evap hoses. This is part of the purge valve system here. So we can take those apart. It's got 4 clips, not just 2 little fingers, but 4 fingers that have to be released in order to slide that lock out of the way. Wow. What a mess. Okay. And it may help to use a little pick or a little pocket screwdriver with some of these things to release the little fingers. Just try not to break them, because if you do, obviously it won't hold on as well, and you may get a little bit of an air leak. And set an evap code, check engine light, whatever, for a small evap leak. Those things can be really annoying and hard to find. There we go. Just had to pinch and squeeze it a few different ways. Okay, let's go back here and let's get this purge valve undone. So we'll take our safety clip, slide it back, pinch and squeeze it, and then undo this side of the green clip and the other side of the green clips. I tell you what, these green clips are difficult to get apart. All right, let me take you in here real quick, show you what I undid. So I got the purge valve undone. There's electrical connector. I've got that orange tape on. Then these green tabs. And it comes over here, connects up near the throttle body, comes over here, and connects up to this air hose. So now that that's undone, we can go ahead and lift it up and get it out of our way. So this one is next. Let's see what we have to do. Let's follow it down here to the passenger side and see what we got to do to remove it. So down here in the passenger wheel well area, you'll be able to see through that hole there, and there's a worm clamp where it attaches that tube to the front, the intake side of the turbo there. So we'll undo that there. And then also, if you look up through here, you see where I've wet these areas. I put some WD-40 on that. It's a little pro tip for you. Anytime you got one of these little tabs that has to stab into a little rubber grommet, spray them with WD-40 and they'll come apart a whole lot easier. So here, let me show you an example of one of those grommets I was talking about. So see this pipe right here has a grommet that holds it into that little area right there. Spray it with some WD, wiggle it, and pops right out just like that. And then right back in, right back out. No problem at all. You see how nice and lubricated that is. And I've undone the other end of this pipe from the turbo down there. So hopefully now we can give it a little wiggle. Yep, there we go. Came off the turbo and up and out she comes. And I'm going to set this over here on this side so that I remember where these pipes go. Next piece of the puzzle is going to be this pipe right here. We undid the worm clamp over here on this end above the turbo, and it's got a grommet that stabs in right here. Got some WD on that, and then when we were under the truck to begin with, we undid the other end of this thing. So just pop it out of the grommet, pop it out of that tube over there, and then let's see, how do we work this thing out of here? What kind of a rotation event do we need to do? Maybe it needs to go underneath the car to come out. I don't know. There we go. I think it may actually go out under the car easier than through the top, but let's see. Okay. Now we'll come up through the top. Just rotate, twist, pull, and out she comes. Now we're starting to free up a lot of room in front of this engine. Still got a few more pipes to come apart, and then we're going to have to drain the coolant system and take those coolant pipes out of the way, and we'll be in business. Alright, next piece of this puzzle that we're going to take apart is going to be this air pipe right here. I've labeled it number 3. I've undone this worm clamp on this side. It's got a little grommet that it stabs in here, and then when we first began, we undid the other end under the truck. So let's see if we can wiggle this thing free somehow. Pop it up out of the grommet. There we go. Now up out of the grommet. Now this end here is kind of sticky. So you may find if these ends with the near the turbos are kind of stuck, you may find you need to get a little pick or something in between the rubber and the plastic hose to release that grip. But I was able to pull that one free. Now let's see, how do we maneuver this thing out? It looks like it needs to kind of come up, and this pipe right here is kind of restricting us a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to undo this end here of this pipe just by picking up on this blue tab, sliding it out, and then wiggling the thing to release it. Yet another crazy idea from the engineers on a connector. That's hard to do with one hand. There it goes. Okay, so we'll swing that just back a little bit like that. That way we don't have to remember where it goes. And then see if that gives us a little bit more freedom to get this pipe up and out. There we go. It's a tight fit, that is for sure. These things probably will come out a little easier once you have the coolant pipes and everything undone. Looks like they're kind of binding up on some of these coolant lines, so we may save that, but we'll see. So to get this air pipe out, we're going to have to remove this intake where it connects to the throttle body. And so I've already unplugged the connector here and popped it out of its little Christmas tree holder, loosened up this clamp right here, and then broken the seal between this rubber and the throttle body. Squirt a little WD in there, and it'll slide off a whole lot easier. Come on. Don't make a liar out of me. Kind of hard to do with one hand. It needs a little bit more than one hand. There it goes. Come on, all the way. There you go. All right, and now the other end of this pipe, remember we took loose under the car to begin with, so we should be able to rotate this thing, pop it loose from down there, and then drag it all up through here. Okay, I popped it loose from its hose down there, and now we can try and rotate it a dozen different ways to try and get it up and out of the engine bay. I'm going to need two hands, but I'll bring you back and show you how it's done. So yeah, once I'm done, you can grab this thing and rotate it and pull it straight out the top. So now that this air intake to the throttle body is out of the way, let's see if we can get this pipe out. So pop it out of the grommet, pop it loose from its hose in the back. It's already undone from down below because we did that to begin with. And then I'm just pulling up. Seems like it's coming a little bit. Rotate, wiggle and rotate. Boy, it's down there. I don't know if you guys can see that, but it is definitely snaked down through all of that stuff down there. All of the hoses. Let me see if pushing it down is any easier. I don't think it will be. It looks to be. Okay, there we go. So that was the trick. All right, let me show you again. So the trick is to rotate this thing like so, and then come up. There we go. All right, so last of the air inlet pipes that we need to undo is going to be this guy here. And really we could probably get away with leaving it in place because I think I could probably get to the timing cover pretty well with this still here. But it's not too hard to remove now that you got everything else out of the way, and it'll probably make for better filming, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. It's got a little grommet that it pushes into, so once you put the WD on it and work it a little bit, it'll just pop right out, see, like that. And then on the other end it attaches to the turbo, and the way you get to that is come down through the wheel well and then look through this little gap back here, and you'll see the bolt or the worm clamp that you need to undo right there. So undo that and then fish that out. So I went through the wheel well over there to undo the worm clamp, popped it out of this grommet here, and then just pull it forward and it comes loose from your turbo. Now the front pipe here, it is connected to this pipe which we undid underneath. You see I'm moving it there? We undid that to begin with under the truck, and so all of this can now come up and out together. Go ahead and remove this bracket here. It's held on with two 8mm nuts. And then you can pull it off and put it to the side. And then we're still tethered over here. It looks like a Christmas tree and some zip ties. So we'll get a little puller, trim puller, and pull it off of here. That way we can move these hoses to the side and get them out of the way of removal of our valve covers. Front's pretty much cleared out, so let's go ahead and move up here to the intake. And in order to get this intake off, it's bolted down to the top of the valve covers. So the intake has to come off before the valve covers can come off. Intake is held down with, it looks like 8mm bolts, and we're going to have to undo a few of these connections. So let's just start with this here, throttle body control. So anytime you see one of these little clips like that, just remember that's a locking clip. So just pull that tab back, whatever color it is, white, red, whatever, and then you can pinch and squeeze what's left to get this thing off, like so. All right, there's another connector back here. Looks like some kind of manifold pressure sensor, so it's got a white clip that we need to move back. Pinch and squeeze, get it off, and I'm going to tag these so that I remember to put them back together. And before we can unbolt our intake, we've got one more hose here. It's got a blue clip, so just like the rest of these kind with half a blue clip or whatever. Some of them are green or whatever. You see there's a little blue tab right there. So pull that tab forward and then wiggle and pull the whole thing off. Same thing with this guy. Just pull the tab forward, wiggle and pull, get the thing off of there like so. I'll just set it here for now so that I'll remember where it goes, and I'll mark that for, or take a picture of that. Now to get the intake off, as I said, we got these 8mm bolts all the way back, and then we'll check and make sure if there's anything else that's tethered to it before we lift it up. Now we've got the intake bolts loose, all of these 8mm, and then there's this wiring harness which has a few Christmas trees that were stabbed into it. These two are broke off, and so it's only really got one left in the back here, but we'll pry that thing out of there. All right, and see if that's all there is to getting this thing off. So let's see if it'll just lift right up now and come out. The nice thing about these bolts on this intake manifold is that they're all captured, so they don't come out. And there it is. So there's the manifold gaskets as well, and you can see it goes down through the intake. The valve covers. All right, so now that we've got the valve or the intake off, you can see that we've got straight runs right into the inside of our engine here, and we do not want anything falling down in there causing trouble. So the first thing that I do, and I would highly recommend that you do anytime you open up an engine, is to stuff some rags down into all the intake ports that you open up so that nothing can accidentally fall in and mess up the internals of your engine. Intake is removed, so we're getting closer to removing our valve covers. So I'm going to go ahead and remove things off the top of the valve covers that are in the way. We've got this hose here, and it has some kind of a sensor attached to it. So we'll take this off. It's got a white tab, slide back, pinch and squeeze to pull it off of there. And as is my custom, of course, I'm marking it so I remember it. And then this guy here, little blue thing, you slide back and then wiggle and pull. Oh, there she goes. All right, so these hoses, we will remember where they go and set them aside. And let's continue removing things off at the top of the valve cover so that we can get them off of here. And it looks like we've got this wiring harness which is tethered down with some Christmas trees. We'll work those out and unplug things from where they are plugged in. This Christmas trees again. And then we've got these solenoids for the cam phasers. We'll go ahead and pull up the white locks on them. Give them the old pinch and squeeze to get them off of there. There we go. There's that one. And then we'll go ahead and take the coils out as well. And then we'll start working on the high pressure fuel pump here. Other side, we've got some coils, a wiring harness, and then it's always, when you're going to remove the valve cover valve covers, it's always a good idea to remove your dipstick as well, because this thing will be hanging up down inside the engine. Ask me how I know. Okay, so I've gone through here and I've disconnected all of the connectors and unconnected all the little Christmas trees, and you'll especially pay really close attention back here on the back side of these valve covers. Even when you think you got them all, go back and look again, because I'll bet you there's more. There was dozens, it seems, of connections to keep these wires tethered down. But once you get them undone, you can kind of tuck them over to the side, and if necessary, we'll take like a bungee or something like that and kind of pull it over to the side out of the way. And then the same thing on this other side here. Just undo all your connections, all your Christmas trees, everything that you think you might need out of your way, and just kind of tuck everything to the side. And then we should be good to start at least unbolting this side. We'll go ahead and take our coils out, but we'll unbolt the valve cover on this side. And then on this side, we're going to have to undo the fuel system. Here we'll undo this fuel filter or fuel inlet to the high pressure fuel pump, and this hose here looks like needs to come off. And so we'll show you that here in a second. You got to be very careful with that, obviously, because there'll be some fuel that leaks out of that. Car's been off for a day or two, so there's not a ton of pressure still in the system, but there will be some. All right, pull into coil packs next. Pretty simple. Just undo the 8mm bolts that go with them and just pop them straight up. and you can set them aside. They don't go in any particular order, so you can just set them all in a pile. Now that the coils are out of the way, we can go ahead and start, at least on the driver's side here, removing the valve covers themselves. There are some bolts around the edges, and these are studs, so we need to remove these this bracket to get to the bolt underneath. Alright, so I've gone around and I've loosened up all these 10mm bolts around the perimeter of our valve cover on the driver's side. And just a note, there's not one in the center on the back here. There's no bolt in the center back on this side, but on the passenger side there is one. So we'll remember that when you're taking this thing apart. And these things, this car's got 100,000, a little over 100,000 miles on it, and so these gaskets may be stuck down pretty good. And so you're going to want to try and pry up in a safe place, where you can get a little bit of meat underneath there, and I'll show you how to do that here in a second. But even with that, especially these seals around the spark plug tubes, they like to stick on there really good. And so if you plan on replacing them, which I do, there's a way that we can put a pick in there and kind of break that seal a little bit, and that'll help these things to lift off a little easier, and I'll show you that too. So these seals around these spark plug tubes here, they're going to be stuck really good. And so you can take a pick or a sharp pointer of some kind and jam it down in between your spark plug tube and that seal. Again, you're going to have to replace these seals. It's a good idea to do it anyway. This will just make things a lot easier. And once you start to break that seal, you'll see some of the oil oozing up through there, kind of self-lubricates. And these things will pop off a lot easier if you do it that way. Just know that if you do this, use the pointy end on the rubber and not on the metal portion here of the spark plug tube. You don't want to gouge that or scratch it too bad, or else it won't seal when you put the new one on there. And also, just as an additional help, you can spray a little bit of WD on that seal as you're starting to pry on it. It'll kind of work its way down against that seal in the spark plug tube. Let's see if we can't break the seal on this this valve cover now. So again, look for some place where you get some meat on the valve cover and you got something to pry against, something sturdy on the engine. So here's a good spot right here. Got this little trim tool kind of wedge shaped thing here. Just give it a steady pressure in the upwards direction. And if it feels like it's not wanting to move at all, don't force it too much, because you could always crack these plastic valve covers. And then also, just, if it feels like it's stuck down really good, just double check, triple check that you got all your bolts all the way around undone. And that way you don't, again, break this plastic cover. Here's another nice spot. Get a little bit of leverage underneath. Pop it loose there. Okay. Now we need to find something back here that we can grab hold of and get a little bit of leverage to pry this thing up a little bit more. Maybe in the back corner. I don't want to do it against this connector, but maybe the fuel rail. Let's see if I can get some leverage in here against something substantial. There's a bolt and a fuel rail. Let's see if that gets us anywhere. And you can use different types of pry tools, screwdrivers, whatever. Just be careful not to mar up any surfaces and pry too hard on the plastic, or it could crack. So just keep prying up in these little places. Keep some constant, steady pressure on it. Work these little seals with a little bit of WD-40, a little bit of a pick against them, and just keep some constant pressure up, and it'll eventually pop loose like that. And then you can get your wiring harness out of the way and slide this thing forward and take it out of the vehicle with hopefully both hands. But there you go. So there is your driver's side valve cover off. And again, you got that engine open over there. We're going to put our towels in there to keep anything from falling in there. I know you don't plan on anything falling in there, but that's why they call it an accident, because it wasn't planned for something to happen. And you just don't want to have to go at the best, you're fishing something out of this intake with a magnet. Worst, it's falling down on top of your piston and you can't get it. Quick overview of the bolts that hold down the driver's side valve cover. So there's 3 in the front here. Again, these little studs, you'll have to take those nuts and that bracket off to get to these. And then here, all the way around the back. Now there's no hold down in the back middle on this one. There's one here, there, and then just loosen these up with a little WD and kind of try to move them away from the seals of the spark plug tubes and things. That'll make it a whole lot easier to come off. And you do not have to pull these cam position sensors. So in order to get the valve cover off of the passenger side, it's got this high pressure fuel pump in the way, and so we're going to have to unbolt that. And so we're going to undo these lines to the high pressure fuel pump. This is the high pressure side, and then the low pressure side coming in has got one of those normal squeeze slide on fittings. But we'll go ahead and crack the high pressure side first. So get yourself something to soak up any spills of gasoline. I've got a little bit of this absorbent mat here. We'll slide that underneath the fitting. Hopefully that'll get hold of anything there. And like I said, this thing's been off for a couple of days, but still doesn't mean that there's not going to be something potentially stuck in there. So let's see if we can crack this loose. All right, it wasn't that tight, and there we go. So you see, it squirted just a hair out, but it's not so much the squirt, but it'll be the amount that runs out of this hose when we disconnect it too. There we go. Get that backed off all the way. There we go. And then pull it away, and it'll kind of dribble out for a minute. We'll catch all that with our little rag there, and then we'll undo the other side. Once you've got this broke loose, you can undo this bolt here that kind of holds it down. Get yourself a little bit more play in that line. Let it drain a bit. There we go. And that's probably pretty good. Okay, yeah, it's done. Now need to come over here and get some light on the subject. Now we need to come over here and get this low pressure side undone. So this clip, you just pull it off the back side like so. Slide it forward and the little teeth will come out of the fitting. Of course, it's got a little tether as well that wants to hold it in place. Makes it a little bit tricky sometimes, but there you go. You'll get it. And now you'll need a special tool to slide in between where these two go to unlock the little tabs inside of this catch so that we can slide that back. And again, we'll put some rag underneath here because it'll dribble out some fuel. Alright, so let's get this low pressure fuel line at the high pressure fuel pump. You're going to need one of these tools like this. They've also got little plastic ones, but basically you need to find the right size to go around your fuel line here and close up. Try and get you where you can see. Hopefully that's visible. Once it closes around the fuel line, you want to wiggle it and push it into the fuel line right there. And then whenever it goes inside, then you can wiggle off the hose. There we go. And then I've got this towel down here to catch the mess. Let me try it with the other hand. Come on. All these little Christmas trees are hanging up on me. I'm gonna have to use both hands, but you can see what's got to happen here. This pushes in and it releases the tabs. I'll show you in higher detail when I take it. All right, so I switched over to my little plastic one. seem to work a little bit better. But basically this thing slides in and it pushes these little tangs apart that are inside of here, and lets that slide off of there. And there really wasn't any too much fuel that came out of that, so I'm just draining that down in here, catching that a little bit, and we'll go ahead and move this pipe out of the way. That way we can unbolt our high pressure fuel pump. Let's go ahead and get this high pressure fuel line out of the way, and we're going to have to come back here, and it's tethered to the back side of the cylinder head here with an 8mm bolt, and then we'll have to undo it down here where it bolts up to the fuel rail. So getting to the other end of this high pressure fuel line is kind of tricky, so I found the best way to do it is with a crow's foot wrench. So get that 17mm crow's foot back there, and then you can use that to break it free. And then once it's broke free, most of the time these stainless connectors will just spin by hand. Alright, once broke loose, you can get that loose by hand, and then you can take this line completely out of here and get it out of the way of this valve cover coming up. Okay, so now that we've got all the fuel lines and out of the way, we're ready to take off our high pressure fuel pump. It's held on with 3 bolts that are T45, so Torx 45, and this has a piston underneath it, and that's how it works. And so when you release the pressure off of this thing or loosen these bolts, we need to make sure that we do that evenly. So we're going to take each one of these, especially the 2 on the outside especially, need to come up the same amount. So you turn one a couple turns, turn the other a couple turns, turn the other one a couple turns, and just back and forth until you release the pressure off of the spring and piston underneath here. So this one here, it's just threaded into the plastic manifold. It doesn't hold any stress or anything like that, so we can go ahead and just take this one out and get it out of the way. Alright, now these are the ones that we got to back out the same amount very slowly. Back and forth, just until you'll feel it. The stress will relieve, the spring tension underneath it will be relieved, and then you can go ahead and remove these bolts. So I've got them backed out quite a bit. You see there's a gap now between that bolt head and where it bolts down, and you'll be able to wiggle this thing around. That's how you know it's time to, or it's safe to go ahead and remove those bolts completely. Now here's the first time that we're running into a bolt that we can't technically reuse, or at least not supposed to. Ford says these are torque to yield, and you need new bolts when you put this back on. So the part number is here for these new bolts, and they just, you know, they stretch, and so if you put them back in, you run the risk of this thing, because it takes so much pressure to pump this thing up, you run the risk of this thing popping loose. So that's the reason why they want you to get new bolts. Alright, so I took the bolts out. Let's see what's under here. Alright, there you go. So there's that high tension spring right there. There's a little cup and a piston inside of there that moves up and down, and some seals that need to be replaced as well. Here, these rubber gaskets, there's one around the outside and then one around each one of the bolt holes. So don't forget to replace those whenever you're putting this all back together. Now that we got our high pressure fuel pump out of the way and everything for the most part off of the top of this valve cover, we're going to go ahead and loosen these seals, lubricate those up, and take all of the bolts around the back, around the edges, and especially this one right back here. Okay, don't forget this one in the middle on the back, and loosen all of those bolts. And when you think you got them all, make sure you go around and get them all again. Just double check, and then you know, just like the other side, find a nice place to kind of wedge underneath and pop up, and then apply steady pressure until it releases. So once you've gone around the perimeter and loosened up all the bolts, and you've double checked and got all of them, there's one in the very front, one in the very back, in the center, then you just pry underneath one of the corners, and then the other corner, and you'll feel it kind of start to pop loose and pop up. Just give it some steady pressure once you start popping it up, and then she'll release. There we go. You just work it out of there. Get your hoses out of the way. There we go. And here is our passenger side valve cover. While I have this one off, I'll show you real quick. So this is the front side, obviously. And so you got one bolt in the middle in the front. These two, 3 across the back. 1, 2, 3 here. So those are the bolts. And again, just, you know, kind of use a little pick or something in between your spark plug tubes and the seal right here, because this will be the stickiest part. And then also around these little solenoids, put a little WD-40 on there. It really helps this stuff to pop loose. Just make sure if yours has got any cracks or anything like that, that you replace it. And don't forget, once you've got your valve cover taken off, you want to take all of your little rags out and stuff them in the open holes of the engine. All right, so there we go. This has been not a hard job, but definitely not a fast job getting to this point. And this is a good time to test your timing chains. Make sure that they're not loose in any way, because some of the older Ecoboosts especially have a problem with these cam phasers getting a little bit weak on them, and then that timing chain will get loose and then it'll start rattling. This one doesn't have that issue, but if yours does, now is the time that you want to change the timing so you don't have to do all this again. Okay, so there you go. That's how you get those valve covers off. Next thing you need to do is replace the seals and gaskets on that. So check out my other video showing how to get those seals and gaskets in and out of these plastic or composite valve covers without cracking them. And so hopefully you guys got a lot out of this. I know it was long, but again, I do that so that I can show you all those nitty-gritty details. Thank you guys for your time today. I hope that your project goes well. Y'all have a wonderful day. God bless.